again, everyone. This week I'm pulling from several different sources. Got some ephemera from this wonderful old stamp album, this early 90s Smithsonian magazine, although you can't see the cover because I used it for something. A more recent Better Homes and Garden from January of last year. And of course, something from my new Hawaiian collection of ephemera. And first time for this Egyptian book. Do you ever find when you're looking through your ephemera that suddenly you want to read it? Because I'm finding that with a lot of my ephemera. In fact, that Smithsonian magazine, there's a really interesting article about the history of Haiti, something I don't know very much about. I pulled this image out of the Egyptian book. Not sure if I will use it, but I put it off to the side. I may not use it because it is highly familiar, and I'm not sure if it's Tutankhamun, but we recognize it in pop culture for sure. The other challenge I want to present is I'd like to keep the picture format for this collage about this size. So I may use this as my base and just go ahead and adhere everything to this. So this is a little different from what I normally do with my collages this week. Just building from ephemera that interested me. I went ahead and not cut things out, but I pulled aside what I think I want to use, and I'm going to go ahead and start doing my cutting. This image of Lady Robot comes from the Smithsonian magazine, dated back in 1991. It's kind of cool. The Bride of Pinbot. I liked pinball machines when I was a kid, but I don't remember ever seeing this one. I was searching for yellow the other day and came across this image, and I was going to simply cut it out for the color, the gold yellow colors that are used to create the pinbot. But I thought she is too cool to pass up. And I put it off to the side because I was reading the magazine for the article on Haiti. And I kept thinking about it, which is always a good sign. It's kind of like when you go to the movies and you keep thinking about the movie afterwards, unless it was a really bad movie and you're remembering it because it was so bad, but mainly you're thinking about the movie because it was so good. So I kept thinking about this image, and I decided, I want to use it. And the other idea I had for the yellow color here, I'm going to put that off on the back burner for now. And it's basically, it'll be another video. And I just felt like doing something a little more classic in regards to the practice of collage and just keeping things intact, not really manipulating them too much. Just in case I want to use these wonderful colors in another collage, I'm definitely going to. And I love that vintage Game Over, totally reminiscent of pinball arcades, Atari games. The 80s. That part I liked about the 80s. So getting back to cutting here, she's got a lot of wonderful detail that I want to acknowledge and be sensitive about. Usually I cut the inside details like this first before I cut out the bigger parts. For whatever reason today, I just went ahead and cut the bigger parts out first. The paper is semi-sturdy. It's not terribly fragile, even though it's well over 30 years old now. magazines held up pretty well, but of course in my hands I tore apart the cover, so that's, that's not gonna, it's not as sturdy as it was, but it's still pretty good and still full of wonderful images. And this I found sitting in a park. Somebody just left it in a park nearby in Pasadena, and I swept in and got it. So getting back to this cutting, I'm just being very careful cutting between these areas so we can maintain the wonderful illustration here. I don't know what the article was about. It had something to do with pinballs and the Smithsonian. Probably should have read it. I find I get a lot of reading material from my ephemera, so it serves two purposes. I get an opportunity to read something I may never have heard about before, and then I have art supplies. So I'm going to continue cutting in time lapse. Has a Star Wars quality about her, doesn't she? So deciding to use this image for the collage and maybe tell a story in some way, shape, or form, thinking about a title, that's why I went ahead and grabbed some of my Egyptian ephemera. I always give myself leeway in that maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't. And I kind of like this guy because he doesn't have a very recognizable face. That's why I thought he might be good for this. I am hanging on to the recognizable mask as well. I was even thinking about maybe cutting out this face and putting in a human face. I might do that still. I did a delicate cut at the beginning of the video of these beads. I liked the look of this fruit. I see a color palette forming, a lot of gold, a lot of yellow. So I may want to contrast that. I may want to take that in consideration. This was from the Better Homes and Gardens magazine, and I like that it's there's text and that it's black and white, monochromatic. That might work. And we have a couple going on. The comment about fixing dinner. So I'm slowly thinking about couples here and playing around with this just a little bit. So is this text going to be really important that I need to keep it legible and visible? So something to think about. I grabbed this from the Hawaiian magazine. It's actually an artist, Rebecca Lewis Law's Awakening. It's a flower, like pressed flowers, brought into a composition. I'm not sure if I will use it for this collage. However, it's appealing to me because of the color palette we're forming here with the robot lady and her pharaoh prince. So that's looking kind of interesting. Got some interesting colors going on. And the nice contrast of this as a possible background. I also grabbed some green from the Hawaiian magazine, mainly looking at this part. Now I have several of these Hannah Howe magazines and I love this image, but I'm not using it for this particular collage, but I wanted to use this. I have several of these magazines, so cutting here it's okay. I mean, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit because I know I'm cutting into an image on the back that I definitely want to use someday. But I have several more of the magazines with the image, so we should be all right. I can use it another time. So this looks like a pineapple field I'm not sure. Not sure where pineapples grow. But I love the pattern that it takes. And it's not recognizable really as anything but pattern. And that's why I chose it for this collage. She is highly illustrated and she contrasts well with a photo. I also grabbed another green, not using the model, but really the green that is represented, because my thinking was putting it side by side with the pineapple field. I'll show you what I mean in just a second. I just wanted to have another shade of green going on. Something like this, maybe, just to change it up a little bit. If it even makes it into this collage, I'll have it on the ready. I also have the Rosetta Stone. But I think I'm going to leave it alone, and then this clown face, because why not? Clowns. They will go off to the side. I think I'm going to put this off to the side also. I was still thinking about maintaining a smaller format, smaller picture plane. So here we have some mixed media paper, 5.5 by 8.5, so relatively small. Let's see. Maybe I'll use a piece that I was working on something and maybe it didn't feel successful, so I went ahead and did something else with it. Or we'll just splurge and give ourselves a fresh sheet of paper. I like to recycle my papers as much as I can, literally recycle them and also use them again as possible bases for collage. And now I'm thinking this is going to be too small because my primary focal points are much bigger than this. So it's all right, we'll just give it a shot. See, she's pretty big. We can trim her down if necessary. In fact, I need to cut away she has a high heel here and you can't really see it because I didn't cut away. For something as detailed as this, I want to make sure the detail really pops out. Okay, much better. I don't want to use any of the white in the background. That's not necessary. I keep coming back to this as my background. And I did like the green. See, that's much bigger, obviously, than what I had in mind. This is a pan. It was an advertisement for a food charity. So I'm just going to cut this out. Highly recognizable, one of those Pyrex Corningware baking dishes from way back when, although this was from a more recent magazine. We still use those things. Some of us do. I know I do. And if not, most people can relate to it. They've seen them before. So I really love mixing my black and white or gray imagery with color like this. I like it quite a bit. And then we have food talking about. I had also taken this Louis Vuitton ad and I was thinking about using these red bubbles. And I also collected some of the stamps. I wanted stamps that had circular imagery in it, like this cameo, and then this very highly stylized circle from Czechoslovakia. Then we had this rose, I think from Romania, I'll just go ahead and set them off to the side. I wanted to add the circles, the baubles, because they're beautiful, and also to add interest and allow the eye to flow. But I am thinking again about that background, or base rather, for my collage, and I think 5.5 by 8.5 is going to be a little small. I like to work small because it allows me to store things easier. And I've done massive pieces before. I've done collages that are like 24 by 18, but I haven't done that for a long time. I used to work very big, In art school, I loved working big. So let's see. I'm going to cut out way more than these, but I'm going to go ahead and play in time lapse and see if I come up with anything immediately. This is turning into the classic example for me, the little trouble that I run into with composition. Less is more. I have two very strong images, and I want to work on a kind of small plane, so this may not work out harmoniously. Color-wise, it could work out. I was doing some playing with the pieces, and I'm just not sure it's something that works out. But I don't want her to be by herself either. She's too interesting to be alone. I do like this monochromatic background. I went back to the Smithsonian. This was a Nordic Flex ad from the 90s, and I originally looked at this little black and white image, and I thought that might be a really good juxtaposition with her. Size-wise, obviously he's much smaller and he is black and white, so I'm leaning towards this instead of our Egyptian prince. And I'm feeling this a little bit more than I was with the Egyptian image. So I may have to put him away for something else. This image also that I cut out at the beginning of the video, it's a nice cutting job, but I think it's too much again. I thought it might go good with her, but I think it's a little bit too much, even if I add it to somebody who's black and white. And I'm wondering if I should cut him out entirely or leave him in the text box. And the fruit, what about the fruit? The fruit makes for kind of a noisy background for our pinbot. And I'm also not sure about these backgrounds. I do like this. I kind of like that look, but it's also may not be necessary. Less is more. I did cut out 2 more red baubles. The reason for that, we now have 3. I love the number 3, the power of 3, and also 3 is an odd number, and in composition, it's a nice idea to try to maintain odd numbers. Not always, but mostly. So this is where I'm at. I'm going to do some more thinking in time lapse. How interesting. He actually fits height-wise this picture of the fruit. He's cut off, cropped off, but he kind of stands out in kind of a cool way. I'm digging it. And I think they might make a really nice couple. Originally, what I was going to do with him was have these baubles be his background. And they still could. I like the shadow here of this bauble. Looks like the shadow was created by him. But I'm leaning more towards this fruit, so the baubles might go. And I'm going to keep this. And we are talking about dinner. And here is this fruit and our model. And he pops out way better on this background. And here she comes. have a dominatrix type of thing going on here. Maybe, maybe not. That wasn't my intention, but that's probably how it's going to be interpreted, especially if I do something with the high heel like that. Let's sneak his arm right behind her foot. Okay, I still want to have the text be visible, so it is legible and it is apparent what's going on. Or maybe I'm just too much in love with this text. The other thing I wanted to share was don't be afraid to flip things over. This still reads Let's Fix Dinner. It's not difficult, but sometimes it is the best thing you can do for your piece. It changes the composition and things may not be as heavy. And I'm thinking that maybe the solution here, because we have this going on, there's a lot of noise going on up there with the tin foil. So I'm not sure. I'm still thinking, do I want the baubles? They aren't totally necessary. She is so strong as a focal point. I think that's why I'm having a little bit of trouble with this week's collage. Yeah, you see, that's not, you don't always have to fill up. It's that horror vacui thing where you don't have to fill up the picture plane. It doesn't have to have all these elements going on, like my stamps and other things. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be. And squeezing them tighter together can be very satisfying. And I think that's basically what I'm going to do. So it's going to be something of a minimal collage. All that work for a minimal. Really? I don't know. I'm going to think about it a little more and get back to you and show you what I come up with, because I think I'm going to be done with this in a minute. I'm spending way too much time on this collage. It's been a fun time, but I'm learning something, that you have a very powerful piece going on here that can be a problem. I couldn't even think about tucking her beneath this tin foil. I'm going to try that just a second here. See, again, just taking chances, because what did I tell you at the beginning? This is a 1991 magazine that I got the robot image from, that I found for free, which means, yeah, sometimes it's hard to find stuff like that, and it's always a thrill when you do. But at the end of the day, it is just paper. It's not the Book of Kells or anything like that. It's just magazine paper. So maybe I need to take some chances here. Okay, here we go. That's what it needed. I needed to do something like this. This works. Okay, my text is being sacrificed, but I think for the sake of the composition and what I wanted to do, I think it's okay. Do I want to keep the fruit, and do I want to keep our guy? I think so, just to say it's done. Just finish and move on to the next project. Yeah, like I said, that's very highly dominatrix going on there, but also kind of fun and silly, because it's just absurd. We're just being absurd here. It's absurd collage also, which is always fun. For such a small collage that took longer than I anticipated, and pared back a lot on the ephemera I thought I was going to use for the piece. Also, the color scheme changed with the evolution of the composition. I like it a lot better. I felt that this poor guy was just going to be battling too much with her. They were similar in color, and it was just too busy to have him. So that's why he didn't make it in. The fruit was a great idea, but again, battling with that focal point. You really have to pare things down and consider what your focal point wants to say. She's a diva and she wants attention. So I gave it to her, and I gave her a new boyfriend too, new husband. And I think because we're going with the dinner theme and the text is not as visible any longer, it's upside down and it is covered, but it is generating, I believe, a feeling of eating and casseroles and what's the role of women in the kitchen. No, we're getting way too deep here. This was just a fun little collage. So I think I'm going to name this maybe dinner time, what's for dinner, uh, that something along those lines. And I really like the red because again, it gives it that little bit of oomph it desperately needed. He is a perfect partner for her. So I'm going to obviously keep the other ephemera that I had. It just goes to show, pick as much as you can because it makes for a stronger composition in the end. You just have to learn when to say when, almost like when you're eating too much. If your eyes are bigger than your stomach, you're in a lot of trouble. In this case, I think it's a nice sized portion and everybody should be relatively satisfied. I hope you are, and I thank you again for joining me on this collage journey.